My name is Ken Braband. I am a volunteer with an organization called Team River Runner. We are a nationwide nonprofit with chapters all over the U.S. I co-lead the Green Bay chapter, and our mission is to serve disabled veterans. And the way we serve them and work and play with them is through kayaking, kayaking as a healing water sport. And I was fortunate enough to be invited on one of Team River Runner's national trips that was held last September on the Grand Canyon, big water, whitewater kayaking. And we had a pod of 4 people, and the blind veteran in my pod was Steve Vasquez. And I'm going to have him come up here now, and our story is going to be Steve talking about his life story for a few minutes, and then I'll join him and we'll talk in particular about the Grand Canyon whitewater kayaking trip, and then we'll allow a few minutes at the end for questions. So let me introduce one of the most remarkable people that I know, Steve Vasquez.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Do I have good audio level? Hope everybody can see me. Sorry. Don't raise your hand. I've seemed to misplace my notes. I guess I'll have to go at it blind. But horrible blind jokes. You gotta laugh sometimes, though, right? So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am, where I come from, and build on this. It's about the journey, right? It's about life. I wouldn't be here today if some things did not occur or happen. Is seeing believing, or believing seeing, or maybe it's doing. Doing. I have this mantra that moving is living. I stare into a still, dark world, and that can be very infectious. It can make you want to be still. It's kind of interesting. And there's a lot of anxieties, a lot of things that you feel as someone who is blind or considered disabled. I like to say, don't diss my ability. But, it's the fear of the unknown maybe is more of what we fear. At least that's kind of how I look at it from my perspective. And so if you close your eyes and you think about your life and all the things that you love, what you do, I remember feeling that way 10 years ago, more than 10, almost 11 years this May. See, I moved across the country to many different places as a kid. My family moved me around quite a bit. My father's a research scientist, and he was always looking for people to work with and to start these pilot projects. And so I was fascinated with science and loved that we moved around. It created this ability to adapt, to learn how to adapt, to make new friends. I kind of mention that because I carry that with me as someone who is disabled, as someone who's lost a sense, the ability to sense the world visually. And so we moved, I lived in Arizona actually, in Oak Creek Canyon near Sedona, a beautiful place, Red Rock Buttes, just one of my favorite places I've lived. I live in western Colorado now, which is another beautiful area near the San Juans. And so we'd made trips up to the Grand Canyon. And I remember looking down from the rim at this little tiny little river. It's not really that small when you're in it, but doesn't feel like it's that small and insignificant. But I remember staring at this immense cavernous hole, canyon, in the middle of nowhere. And just really fascinated with the geology, because you're really like, when you walk down in the canyon, it's like you're passing through time. And it was cool to have witnessed it with my eyes, to have had that experience, and then to have had this great opportunity to paddle the Colorado River, 226 miles in 12 days. Going back to 10 years ago, see, I wanted to give back. I wanted to serve. I lived in Long Island, New York, when the towers fell. There were families and people that were directly affected from September 11th, 2001. My family has a background of serving in many wars. I remember my grandfather would sit us at the table, dining room table, and he'd show pictures of him serving in North Africa, upon Camelback, Pyramids of Giza, the Sphinx. He served out of China. My father was born in Okinawa. I'm not Japanese. I'm half Filipino, half Lithuanian. And so, but I'd hear all these stories. I'd hear all these stories about his service, about what it meant to be part of that conflict. And I looked up to him. I looked up to my dad, who was a Vietnam-era veteran. And when the towers came crashing down, and there were people in I mean, remembering hearing the sirens blaring all day long, and witnessing that changed the world, changed a lot of people's lives, absolutely changed mine. And I decided that I was going to serve in the military. I left and was wounded in May of 2008. I thought there was merit in volunteering for a personal security detail. I was part of a security detail protecting a brigadier general. I wanted to be an asset. I wanted to be someone that could help someone, to be there for someone. And on May 13, 2008, on the northern edge of Baghdad, a shape charge detonated next to our patrol. And it killed a good friend of mine. His name was Staff Sergeant Victor Cota. He died next to me. I could reach out and touch him. That's how close he was to me the day the blast went off. And I was hit with shrapnel in my neck, arms, legs, and head. Had arterial damage in my left arm. I'm completely blind. I have no light perception. A small fragment, superheated piece of metal ripped through the side of my head and ripped through my right eye and my sinus cavities and my left eye through fragments, bone fragments. And I fared well more than some soldiers and warriors, but it definitely changed my perspective of the world. And I remember awaking, half a world away from the battlefield with patches on my eyes, tubes coming out of my arms and legs and my neck, thinking about life, thinking about the loss of my ability to see the world, to see the beautiful sky and to see the stirring campfire, all the things that are just the wild phenomenon that we all love to enjoy. And I was thinking about what the next steps were, because I felt lost. When you can't see the world around you, you can, just like I mentioned, stillness and darkness can make you feel depressed. It can really linger in your mind. I almost felt like I was lost, falling into this hole. I had my father buy me a flashlight, and I held it to my eyes the first so many weeks, just trying to see light. I was starving for it. And so many friends, they're friends now, these veterans came to my side and told me about what I needed to do. And like I said, moving is living. I feel the world underneath me. I've been able to climb all over the world the past 10 years on big mountains. 3 of the 7 summits, I ice climb out in western Colorado. I ski, both alpine and Nordic. None of these things I ever pursued as a sighted person. I never did it. I've learned it all blind. And it's quite amazing to think about it, because some of these things, for me, seem impossible too. I don't understand. I'm like, how is this possible? But after feeling it and understanding the effort, the skill you have to build, and the teamwork, it's not that remarkable, I guess. Maybe it is still. But when I was climbing, I met a gentleman named Lonnie Bedwell. I also had met previously a gentleman named Eric Weinmeyer. And they're both instrumental in the sense that they influenced me to paddle, to kayak, whitewater kayak specifically. And over the years, I had paddled on flat water, and I remember paddling the first time in Portland, Oregon on a lake, and everybody, there was a big group of us, and they all left me behind because I cannot use my left arm very well at the time anyway. I almost lost it because an artery and nerves were damaged. And I would paddle circles, and my guide was not very good at guiding me. And I remember everybody just paddled off, and they paddled to this little island in the middle of the lake, and I'm struggling. And I'm like, I'm never going to do this damn crap again. You know, this is the hell with this. And but look, I mean, 3 years ago, I started really pursuing whitewater. Started in the Charlotte Whitewater Center because it's a closed environment, closed system. I throw myself just into the gauntlet, just over and over into the wilderness channel. And then there's a conveyor belt that brings you back to the top. You keep going. You work on the skills, the technique. Paddle is like an extension of my body. Like when I'm hiking with trekking poles, I'm feeling the world in front of me, and I'm working off of people, reference, sound. Sound bounces off. It's air pressure. It's sound waves. It bounces off the cavernous walls and comes back to my ears, and it travels infinitely into the abyss, into open air. So I get this spatial awareness of where I'm moving, of what's going on around me. And all of that has helped me develop the ability to move as a blind person. And so Lonnie kept on telling me, you got to learn how to roll. You know, we're not proactive when we kayak, when we do these things as a blind person. We're reacting. You know, when you're proactive, someone that's proactive or someone that has sight can see down the path. They can see the future and make a decision about where they need to go, what they need to do. For me, it's arm's length. It's sensing what my boat is doing underneath me, what the water's doing, how the water temperature's changing. If I stick my hand in the water, I could be in shallow water where the water's being superheated. I can feel the current, I can feel the eddy, and I can feel how it's torquing the boat and moving the boat. The one thing is we, just like in every sport, everybody has to learn how to use the tools of the trade. And so I learned everything from high brace, low brace, sweeps, draws, all these different strokes, just like anybody else. And that gave me the power to move the boat, to stay in the boat through some of these massive rapids. And so I started practicing all these rivers, the Youghiogheny, the Cheat, the Platte, the Poudre, the Yellowstone, the Salmon, the New River, over the past 3 years with an organization called Team River Runner. And we practiced different sections of these rivers in all classes, class 1, 2, 3, 4 rapids, trying to hone these skills and work with our teammates. I have a primary guide who sits out in front of me in his own hard shell, river kayak, a secondary behind me, and a sweep. And we work as like the Blue Angels. Right above a rapid, I can hear it a mile away on the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River. A roar, something you can feel in your chest the closer you get to it. It just builds this anxiety in you, when you can't see it. There's this massive roar in front of you. And my guide is trying to get me on a good line before the tongue, before this drop, this acceleration, and then into the maelstrom, into this chaotic water, this exploding water, like Granite or Horn or Hermit, any of these Crystal, just different rapids that you hear about in the Grand Canyon that are quite immense, toss you around like a toy. And so my primary guide is screaming, yelling, on me, and that is creating this sound tunnel, this reference. I'm triangulating where they are, and I'm moving behind them, and I'm trying to feel the boat, how it's moving with all these laterals and different things that are hitting me, and I'm reacting, throwing braces, and digging in and charging behind them. If I lose him, If something crazy goes, he gets upside down, my secondary is screaming in my ear, "You're good, Steve, you're good. Tip left, paddle, paddle." And I'll drive hard, and he'll keep communicating, move me like a chess piece. If he goes under, then I got another person. Sweet. That's Ken. He picks me up. And you're thankful for these guys, because it sucks when you roll over and you come back up and you're like, "Where is everybody?" Hello? And I hear the roar over there. I guess that's where I got to go. So I aim for the roar. And then all of a sudden, your teammates are there. They're like, "Oh, we were taking a drink too." But Ken was the sweet. And my guides that are sitting behind me, it's real important for them to be there because an eddy can grab you. Like I'm trying to read the water as best as I can, but I have to have this reference, this verbal reference, these sounds to follow. And if I get grabbed into an eddy and they jet by me, my primary, secondary guides, and everybody's down the river and I'm alone in an eddy going around and around, I'm going to have to feel the water and find that eddy line and charge out into the noise and peel out on my own, which I have done. And it's not a great feeling. So having a secondary and a sweep is, especially when they call like some of these eddies forever eddy, in the Grand Canyon, or a helicopter eddy, you don't want to be in these eddies. The fences are huge. But the amazing thing is, we accomplished this as a team. And I want to show a video. Google was a big sponsor among many other companies and groups. But they filmed this while we were in the canyon, Google, and for their street view stuff. They were taking these iconic photographs of different things down the river. And so it was remarkable to do this as a team. I was not the only blind individual or veteran. There were 4 others. So let's play that, Vic.
Kayaking a river like this as a blind person is a really different experience. You're running down through the canyons and you just hear the roar and the rage of the rapids as you're getting close to them. It's like, wow, I can't see it. But okay, that one's gonna be big. Yeah, that one's gonna be real big. The Grand Canyon is the ultimate kayaking expedition. It's 12 days, 226 miles, tons of white water.
This is the first time 5 blinded vets are kayaking down the Grand Canyon.
I stare into a still, dark world, and that can make you want to be stagnant. And it's not what I want to be. I want to move.
We developed this simple system for kayaking blind.
My primary guide leading me is creating this verbal reference point.
Whatever noise I make, they try to follow me. Essentially, I am a homing beacon.
The guides are veterans as well, so you have that camaraderie. I'm helping other veterans achieve something, and that's like therapy for me.
Nobody comes home for more of the same. We have physical wounds in this group, but mental wounds as well. We're all healing together. Compassion's there. People are here for you.
Being in the Grand Canyon is just a moment to absorb and feel where you are.
Feels like the river.
We have friends telling us about the geology and the various colors.
Stick him up high.
Touch the canyon wall.
There it is. God.
I told him to tell me not what he sees, but what he feels.
So cool.
He told me he felt insignificant. I knew immediately what he was seeing.
As you journey down the river, the rapids in the Grand Canyon just get more and more intense. It can be absolutely terrifying.
You have to work through this thing in your head where you're going to submit yourself to going through this rapid.
in the military, your life depended on those people around you. And that extends out here.
A little bit more left.
You're putting your lives in their hands once again, and they got you.
There you go. Little bit. Right here. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
When I lost my vision, I had no idea what a blind person could do. I was the first blind person I met.
Oh, you guys.
Can I get a hug, Lonnie?
Being able to find not just a sport, but a community of other veterans was life-changing.
I am hoping that others realize that what's within them is bigger than their limitation.
When you come out here and you kayak the river like this and work as a team, you tap into that resilience and that courage that exists within you.
Just gives you this sense of belonging. Makes you believe that you can do anything.
Thank you. You know, what's so remarkable is people believe in us. To be told you can't do something anymore like drive a car, but you can get in a kayak and navigate a rapid and come out the other side is truly empowering. And to have people believe in you and for you to believe in them, because it's a two-way street, the trust, the teamwork that goes into it, it's quite remarkable what is possible. There's a quote, I think it was Isaac Newton. If I have seen farther than others, it's by standing upon the shoulders of giants. And people have quite literally guided me through life. That's so important to me, and I'm so thankful for people like Ken and my other teammates. Ken, let's join forces.
When I got back from this trip in September, I was talking to my next door neighbor about it. And I said, yeah, we guided 5 blind veterans through the Grand Canyon. And she had this strange look on her face, and she said, well, why would you do that? And she said, what good does it do them? Because they can't see it. And I tried to explain to her, what it was all about. And then a few weeks later, Google released this video. So I took it over and I showed it to her, and she said, oh, I get it now. It was really, it gives me chills every time I see that video. We're going to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of the trip itself and how it was all put together. As we mentioned, this was a Team River Runner national trip. We were fortunate to be sponsored because, as you might imagine, a trip like this is not inexpensive. We worked through an outfitter, the raft company, Azra, who provides not only rafting trips, but kayaking and dory. Maybe Azra doesn't do dory trips.
I don't.
Anyway, they take citizens down the Grand Canyon. So we hired them. I think they cut us a part of the deal on the thing too.
Absolutely.
And then Google Maps was a major sponsor. We had some corporate sponsors as well on this trip that put it together.
Arizona Rafting.
Arizona Rafting Adventure, Azra for sure. How many have done a river trip in the Grand Canyon? There are a number of people have done it. It's just an incredible experience, and our mission made this even more incredible for us because we had this solidifying mission to get these guys and gal down the river safely.
There are 32 of us.
32 in the group altogether. Guides and
crew, support crew.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you want to say more about that?
I'm sorry.
I'm kind of taking over the show. I will point out the map. We have the map up behind us now. just to show where we went, Lee's Ferry up in the upper right corner is the common put-in for all types of river trips in the Grand Canyon. It's one of the few spots upriver where the road actually comes down to the river. And it's about 15 miles downstream from the Glen Canyon Dam. So put in at Lee's Ferry, the dark blue on the map all represents Grand Canyon National Park. So we did, as Steve said, 226 miles over 12 days, and our takeout was Diamond Creek. So the orange arrows are the school bus that we rode up, provided by Azra, the rafting company. If you've been to the Grand Canyon, to the rim, most likely you went to the south rim, and if you're familiar with that, that's right in this area right here, the south rim. So you've seen that viewpoint. Okay, Vic, we can move ahead. This is some of the orientation that the raft company gives us in the hotel in Flagstaff before we leave. We walked across the famous Navajo Bridge as we're going to the put-in at Lee's Ferry. This is at the put-in. It looks kind of like chaos, and a little bit it was too. Everybody's sorting out. Most of us, this is the first time that we are in these boats. Boats were provided by Team River Runner, and most brought up from Phoenix and Flagstaff, I think.
Yeah.
No, Colorado.
Colorado,
yeah.
That was the last place before.
Yeah. Steve and I were both in Jackson Zen's, river running kayak boat. We did not have to carry our gear because that was carried on the rafts. So that was nice. It kept the boats nice and loose and flexible and not weighted down a lot. That's the shot of the entire group. We were told to ham it up a little bit in that shot. And then this is our four-person pod. The small teams that we work with. As you can imagine, trying to get 30-some people in kayaks and rafts down the river together is not really manageable. So you split into pods. You stay in sight of each other, but you work together in these smaller groups as you go through each rapid. Just some of the footage, the shots. We had a world-class media crew that was hired by Google Maps. The gentleman that you're seeing here, Brett Lowell, is a world-renowned adventure filmmaker. I watched a film the other night called The Dawn Wall, The Climbing Wall with Tommy Caldwell, and Brett Lowell here was the head cinematographer for that piece. So the guy has been around. One of the early days of paddling here, the water started out this crystal emerald clear water for us. It was beautiful. It was cold. It comes out of the Glen Canyon Dam at about 54 degrees in the summertime, and about every 20 miles it goes up 1 degree. So by the end of our trip, it was up to about the mid-60s, maybe a little bit higher. The air was hot. It was in the 90s and over 100 degrees on some days. So you had this contrast, and if you got overheated, you'd splash yourself or do an intentional roll or something like that.
Lots of those.
Typical campsite, we all had our own tents that were carried on the rafts. Every time we would make camp at the end of the day, it was a bucket brigade lines to get all the gear off the raft, and then we would do everything in reverse in the morning, and we would pack up and head out for the next day. We averaged 18 miles a day. I think our longest day was 32 miles. Our shortest was our last day, which was only about 5 or 6 miles that we had to finish. You can jump in here anytime.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's interesting because it's not only just on the river. We were hiking up in some of the canyons, and then working with our teammates in different ways. It's kind of interesting how people who've not worked with the blind, maybe that weren't our direct guides in the boats, were working with us on the ground, and keeping us organized, or watching us stay organized. We have our own systems and techniques, and it's such a great way to recover, to rehab, to learn about your ability to do things instead of being maybe cared for too much. We love to be independent, and that's what this kind of trip offers to people that have a disability.
The characteristics of the canyon river trip itself too, 90% of the water through the Grand Canyon is flat water. I mean, you think about these iconic rapids that Steve was mentioning, Crystal and Lava Falls and things like that. But that's less than 10% of your river time is through that. But even though the water is flat, it's swirling and boiling, and there's whirlpools, especially at the bottom of the rapids. To me, that was, as a Midwest whitewater paddler primarily, I mean, that was a whole new experience. I first got exposed to that. We did a practice trip in June on the Salmon River.
It's like 20,000 CFS.
Yeah, 20,000, 25,000 CFS, which was bigger than anything I had ever been on. You know, to me, doing the Wolf River section 3 and 4, you know, that's 2,500. That's really big. And
Right before that, I was in the New River. It was 40,000.
Is that right? Yeah. So I had never experienced these kind of boils and whirlpools.
It'll suck you down.
That was really new for me. So Salmon River in Idaho in June was a shakedown kind of experience for us to make sure that everybody that was going to go to the Grand Canyon was up for the trip, because once you started the Grand Canyon, you're there. You know, if you can't handle it, the only thing you can do would be to ride the raft the rest of the trip. You know? So they had to make sure that we all had the skills and, frankly, the courage to do these rapids. So they tested us in the Salmon River first day, meeting the national organization. As I mentioned, we started off crystal clear water. You see a shot here. This is the confluence where the Little Colorado came into the main Colorado River. And for us at that particular time, the Little Colorado was very silty. And so for the rest of the trip, this is about day 4 where we hit that confluence, the rest of the trip, it was just all silt, as you saw in the video. It looks like mud. It's not quite as, that consistency, but it gets into everything. At the end of the day, you're just covered with this silt, and you try to wash off with soap, and it doesn't come off. And then, in addition to the silt, when you're camping, the sand is so fine. The sand gets into everything. I mean, it's part of the trip. I mean, if you do it, you have to expect the heat and the sand and the silt, but it's still an amazing adventure.
Oh, yeah.
This is trip leader Steve Mace. He was giving us a little geology talk one day before we hit the river. And I think the upcoming big rapid that day was called Hans. And he was explaining the geology by putting sticks on a table, and then he had the blind guys come up and feel the arrangement of the sticks so they could see what he was talking about, the strata, all the different rock layers. And if you know the Grand Canyon, you know that as you proceed through it, you're going back in history. Each layer, you're going deeper and deeper through time until you get to rock layers that are 1.8 billion years old. And it's an amazing view, and it's an amazing geology experience as well. If you've read of John Wesley Powell and how he documented the early trips through it, and he was a geologist and a surveyor, it's fascinating reading to be reliving some of those same places that you read about.
Steve's quote, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Since he's up there?
Sure. You mean the poem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Steve Mace, our trip leader, is quite an accomplished kayaker, as you might imagine, and has done many, many raft trips on the river. And he read us a poem the morning before we did Lava Falls, which is one of the major rapids of the river. Okay, I'm sorry. A poem by Steve Mace, our trip leader. He read this to us on the banks of the river. And so I just want to read this for you now. It's called Certainty. I say I want to know without question. I want certainty. There's security in that. But it's in those moments of uncertainty when I feel most alive. That feeling of bliss doesn't come from safety, security, or comfort. It doesn't come from that air-conditioned room, that feather bed, or that nice car. No, that feeling of bliss, of freedom, of true joy is much harder to obtain. You find it on a cloudless night in Granite Park, waiting for the moon that never comes. Find it on a snowy peak, cold wind burning the lungs, cool air recharging the soul. Find it in that moment when you take one last breath, peel out of the eddy, and commit fully to the challenge ahead, without doubt, without question. Find it in that moment, that sliver of time when you forget about all the things that could go wrong or what people will think. It's in that moment of metamorphosis when fear turns to focus and consequence to reward. Without fear, there is nothing to overcome. Without uncertainty, there is no room for growth. Embrace the fear and find your moment. And to us, that was just so poignant at that moment because we were all kind of on edge coming up to one of the most major rapids of the entire trip.
It's interesting to think about when you peel out of the eddy, you've committed. You're committed to going through this rapid. There's really no turning back. And so you have to really calm your mind and focus on what is ahead of you, even if you can't see it. But it was a remarkable thing when you channeled all your focus and power into your instrument, your paddle, and your boat, and you danced on the river.
We've got a couple of my GoPro videos. Let's show the Sapphire one, just so you can see what it's like from my vantage point of trying to chase after Steve as he's going through these rapids. Sapphire was, I think, about the Grand Canyon scale of rating is different than the traditional scale. It goes 1 through 10, and this is about a 7, I believe, on the Grand Canyon scale out of 10. I was always so relieved to see Steve roll up.
Why'd you put me over there?
The thing about guiding and safety boating is you feel like you're in that boat up there with Steve, and sometimes you lose track, of what's coming on. Because as you can see a little bit, the waves are not consistent. They'll just shoot up, and then they'll dive back down, and they may knock over Steve, and when you get to the same spot, they're down again. It's just, it feels like chaos. There's a regular rhythm to it, but it's a lot of it's a matter of luck, whether you make it through a rapid right side up or not. Let's show one more, Victor, the Horn Creek one.
It's not that bad. Just close your eyes.
Yeah, there goes the safety boater.
I'm on my own.
There he goes again.
That happened. My guides would be all underwater sometimes.
How do you know?
Are you there? No answer.
I spent a lot of the trip just trying to keep up with Steve. There was one point where we switched roles around, and so Mike, who was normally in the number 3 position behind Steve, was leading, and Eric and I were immediately behind Steve, and Eric and I said to each other, let's see if we can do this next rapid with our eyes closed. And so we, every rapid, you begin to pick up speed, and then you feel yourself drop down the tongue into this rapid. And at that point, we both opened our eyes. we looked at each other and we said, we can't do it. It was just too terrifying. It just made us appreciate all that much more what Steve was doing every day out there.
Maybe let's try to do some Q&A.
Yeah, I think
time runs out.
I think so.
I don't know how much time we have left.
Yeah, questions?
If there's any.
Let's start right up here.
So you're in some pretty big rapids there, and I'm guessing that you probably had to roll more often than sighted people, but tell me if I'm wrong. And then my second part of that question is how often did you have to swim? And what
I'll repeat the question.
while you were swimming?
The question to Steve is, did you roll more often than sighted people, and did you swim?
I swam twice on the river, the whole 226 miles. I was the first swim in the very first tiny rapid because I was just so nervous. But I've done hundreds, thousands of rolls leading up to the canyon, just trying to really be confident in my roll. Offside, onside, hand rolls. I can do all of those. I've never done a hand roll in the rapids, but I was trying to learn everything I could. And the other question, I didn't remember now.
I think that was it.
No.
I guess just the feeling that you have, you know, when you're out of the boat and you're swimming in something like that, you know, and you can't see what's coming.
I probably rolled 17 times the whole trip too, just like a successful roll.
I think I had more than that. Another question? Let's go right on the aisle back here.
Where would you get a copy of that?
Clip, it's on YouTube. You search on YouTube, 5 blind veterans kayak the Grand Canyon, Colorado River.
Yeah, and I'll put in the plug. The question was, where would you see this video again? It is on YouTube. If you Google 5 blind veterans Grand Canyon. I'll put in a plug for my blog because I wrote a day-to-day blog about this. Liquidadventuring.com. Liquidadventuring.com. So you'd have text in there and photos, and then all of my GoPro clips are there as well. And thoughts and feelings and quotes from a lot of the other people in the group.
Can you repeat that, Mike?
Yeah.
Liquid Adventuring, I think it's, I don't know, do you have the slides that shows that on there? Yeah. Let's go, question in the back, way in the back of the room.
Yeah, Steve and Ken, first and foremost, our gratitude for sharing this, this adventure with us. This is beyond epic in my mind. And I appreciate it, the context of the handles, not only during the course of the excursion, but leading up to it. My question is, oftentimes these sort of adventures are addictive. So are you guys contemplating anything next?
Yeah.
The question is, what are we contemplating next? Let's see.
I'm always thinking of something crazy to do, but the MR340 this July, I think we'll be with another team of 5. It's not with Team River Runner necessarily, but it's a group of friends coming together. 5 blind veterans, 5. We'll be in canoes, I think, this time round. And then I might climb with Lonnie in South America on Canoecopia this January. It's coming January.
I'll put in a pitch too for Team River Runner. We do weekly pool sessions in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We are primarily serving sea kayaking events. We do an annual Apostle Islands trip. I see Craig was here from the Milwaukee chapter. He's the chapter coordinator in Milwaukee. We do a lot of whitewater boating. He'll be putting together some whitewater events too. So look us up on Google too, teamriverrunner.com or Google us. Okay, great. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Steve, I've heard some combat veterans say that their experience in war made them less fearful of things after they got back into normal life. And when we see these videos, and as Ken had said, that when we see it, it looks terrifying. Do you think that that experience has helped you be less fearful as you face some of these things?
Everybody hear the question or no? The question was, does Steve's combat experience make him feel less fearful in situations like this?
There's a lot of things that are very relative. I mean, when you serve in the military, you're part of a team. You have gear, equipment, systems, techniques, tactics, procedures, protocol. It's a comfortable feeling to be on expeditions like this, out in the wilderness. There's a lot of camaraderie. I feel that it's a way it's a therapeutic thing. And you learn to focus in hostile places. I think the fear is always still there, but muscle memory and the idea of clearing your mind is something that I love about challenges, physical challenges and mental challenges. And so, absolutely, I think there's some merit to that.
Time for one more? Yes.
How do you afford it? So what's the level of sponsorships that it takes to do? I mean, you had Google,
Yeah.
help with some of that. Are most of the trips that you do sponsored by an organization of some sort?
Absolutely. A lot of the trips I've been on, whether it's climbing or paddling, are sponsored by nonprofit organizations or directly from specific donors or people that want to put on an event to raise awareness or to do something just epic. And it's a lot about trying to create awareness and show people that with good teamwork and you can push the limits, you can do amazing things. It might be reckless, I guess. So it's interesting what people, I'd have to sit down with everybody and ask them, what do you feel about this? But it is, so we're serving in the military. Sometimes crossing the street, I put a lot of trust in someone that just helps me walk across the street, and a lot of things can happen anywhere in life. So, but I mean to go on a tangent. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to get out of the room, so I'll say thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Steve will be outside. Beginning a standing ovation.
Thank you.